was sitting across from a guy at a wedding one time. He was retired and he was talking to me about his time in business. He said that every year he would go and he would sit across from his supervisor and give a report on what was happening in his division. And the first year or two, he went to that supervisor with all of the problems that were happening under his division in that year. And that supervisor looked him squarely in the eye and said, "Do not come to me with your problems. Come to me with your solutions." So today, I'm going to come to you and explain to you some of the problems that I've been having, and I'm going to give you the solutions that I have worked through to really mitigate these issues into the future. First, I'm going to read a comment from one of you guys, and really the comment that encouraged me to make this video in the first place, because I think sometimes we can start to feel isolated in our struggles. But this was a comment from a viewer, and he said that this has been one of the most difficult seasons he has had on his farm for anemia. He raises goats instead of sheep, but he said he still finds my channel extremely helpful. And I can second that. It's been a really difficult year for that on my farm as well. In fact, I lost 3 adult ewes, 4 lambs, and 3 goats to anemia this year. While losing lambs is pretty normal, you'll lose a few from birth to weaning, losing the adult sheep is really what had me kind of scratching my head. But I noticed when I really evaluated, there was one common denominator between the loss of those 3 adult sheep, and I'm going to let you know what that was in this video. I'm also going to share with you some of the supplies that I'm using in this season. If you want to click on the link down below, there is a list of all 30 products that I keep in my sheep care cabinet year-round, which includes these 4 or 5 products I'm getting ready to show you today. So you guys know that last year we had a drought, and it was a really difficult season to navigate through, but not really from a sheep and goat perspective. In fact, sheep and goats do really well during the drought. What made the drought so difficult for me last year was the fact that I made the decision to buy a cow herd right before the drought started. By the end of that drought, I had basically liquidated the entire cow herd, with the exception of about 3 moms that are still on my pasture right now. The sheep sailed through the drought in excellent condition, and really it was a good time for them from a health perspective. It's when we have a lot of rain that you really have to be strategic about your management. And this year has been one for the books as far as rainfall goes. Even here in the middle of July, where we are typically dry, we are still continuing to receive spring-like torrential downpours. Another second set of circumstances that really culminated to make this a difficult season for me was that I had sold a lot of sheep, and I was working really deliberately with that group of sheep that had sold to make sure they were staying up to date, that all of their health checks were passing, and that they were really in prime condition to move on to the next farm. And for about 4 weeks, I had, to be honest, neglected my primary flock. As I took care of these sheep that were getting ready to be shipped off of the farm, I had, number 1, skipped my May inspection for the primary flock, and number 2, became very lax in my rotational grazing program. In fact, I let the sheep graze openly for about 4 weeks during the very worst time for parasites. So that was really where I got backed up, and that was just a mistake on my end. I ultimately got all of the sheep that I needed to shipped off to new farms, to their new homes, happy and healthy. But then I got home and I began to just basically amend my ways, and I used some tools to do that. Number 1 is I have a general dewormer for the barber's poleworm, and I use Sidectin. I gave everybody a really good dose of that to get them back on their feet, and I left them in a post-deworming quarantine for about 48 to 36 hours. Because I had run such a significant deworming on them, I left them in confinement so that I could avoid excess chemical residuals on the pasture. And also, what happens when you set a sheep back out to pasture, it will shed some of the parasites that did not get killed by the dewormer onto the pasture. And those parasites are resistant to the dewormer. So by shedding them onto a dry lot rather than onto pasture, it just lengthens the lifespan of the tools that I have at my disposal to work with these parasites. Sometimes a sheep gets pulled down so bad into such a deep anemia that I need to do more than just deworm. And there's kind of a 4-step process that I take for a sheep that has developed significant anemia, meaning that their eyelids are super pasty, pale white, and they potentially have a bottle jaw, which is just a fluid buildup in their jawline. And so after that Sidectin, I will run an anemia shot. It's an Anemex 100 supplement, and then I will run a vitamin B shot. These 2 elements really help the animal kickstart their production of red blood cells. Now, that Anemex 100 is an extra label product. FDA says it's only good for pigs. I use it for sheep at my own risk, and it really works well. All of these products, by the way, are available at shepherdess.com It really supports my work when you order there, and shipping is free, over $75. In the days following that initial 3-step treatment, I like to use a Nutri-Drench oral drench, and this is just vitamin supplement and energy for that animal that will just continue to rebuild their immune system. Sometimes, like I encountered with the very last ewe that I lost, which was just this morning, you just can't do anything. You just can't get them back on their feet at all. I gave her this 4-step treatment. I threw the kitchen sink at her. I thought it was maybe calcium, and so I gave her a calcium supplement, all of that stuff, and I just couldn't. I couldn't do it. I couldn't save her. She died. And a lot of times I get comments that are from people who don't advocate being so hands-on with your animal. I don't agree 100% with that style of husbandry. I never regret giving an animal my very best to the very end. Now, there's going to come a time when my flock possibly could be too large to where I can give each animal this level of care, but I never regret it. I sleep well at night knowing that even though that animal died, I gave it everything I could, and she didn't die for my lack of trying. There was one common denominator that I noticed between all of the adult ewes that died. And that was that they lambed late. They had lambed in May and June instead of March and April. And what happened there was that by lambing in May and June, they hit peak lactation, which is 30 days after having that lamb, during peak parasite season, which is June and July here in Northeast Texas. When a ewe hits peak lactation, her immune system dips. It hits the lowest spot that it will in her whole entire life cycle. And so to have those two dates really converge, it's kind of like asking for a death sentence. What I'm going to do as a result of that is that this year I'm just going to pull the ram in November. This will prevent anything from having a lambing date beyond March 31st, and then anything that does not breed, I'm going to breed for a fall lambing. I've been wanting to try fall lambing for a really long time. It is an option here. Number one, because Dorpers are aseasonal breeders, and number two, because the weather in Texas, we don't get buried in snow here over winter. So those are my solutions. I lost about 9 animals, and that, to be honest, guys, that really caught me off guard, and that hit me hard. But I had to really zoom out to the reality that I'm working with 100+ animals this year with the lambing swell. That's 2 or 3 times I have ever had to work with. June and July on whole are really exhausting times for me on the farm. In fact, 2 days ago I was out on pasture, and it seemed like the whole entire natural world was against me. I had lost all of my tools. My fence was down. I couldn't find the short anywhere. And it had come at a time that I was done. I was at the end of my rope. And I had to just get down on my knees right beside the water trough right there and just pray. Literally pray for the strength to find my tools to finish the day of work. And when I got done and got up from kneeling there beside my water trough, the sentence came to mind, and it was, conditional commitment rarely leads to success. Unconditional commitment commits to the whole picture. And I was thinking through this and processing this some more, and unconditional commitment really leads to a true love for something. You commit to the good times, you commit to the bad times, and you end up loving it. And that's exactly what you need to move forward in farming or really in anything.